we need to have an awareness of the differences that occur with pressure and flow rate and nozzle size and so forth. And the videos that I've had access to in the past have been a real help, a real crutch to exemplify a lot of this stuff. But like I said, there's 3 out of the 4 that I cannot access this morning, and there's no way to fix it from where I see it. So we're going to look at the one that is there. Is Carol coming? Jonathan, did you steal her donuts and she went home, or what?
I haven't seen her.
I haven't
So
seen her.
You didn't have access to her donuts then if you didn't see her.
Did you just say you don't like donuts?
I said I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Because I could tell you if you don't like donuts.
I thought I was late to this place, which I should have been.
Tom, do you drive through Danville as you go to Southside?
I take the bypass around it.
Okay. What time do you go through?
7:30.
7 to 7:50.
Okay.
I'm on bypass.
All right. Some morning when you just need some supplemental nutrition, there's an outfit called Danville Donuts,
Okay.
which is in there off of, what is it, Piedmont Drive?
I think right by Bojangles.
Yeah, it's sort of across the side street from Bojangles and behind, what is that? There's a furniture place or something.
You're right. Freight and Shules and the DMV. Yeah.
Some morning we need supplemental nutrition, swing by there instead of taking the bypass.
Okay.
And see if you can get enough substance to get you the rest of the way to Southside.
I'll keep that in mind. I actually saw that the other day. Because I was going to the DMV there for something and I saw it, but I didn't stop. But because that actually is my favorite and preferred DMV to go to, believe it or not.
Yeah, I've never been in there, but I did notice where it was. But my son and his wife had some of these donuts. I'm not supposed to eat them because of my sugar, but there have been occasions when I just had to detour and go by there.
Yes.
And it's a little Oriental family that runs it. But
I wonder if the people that used to run the one in Eden that shut down.
Well, this one, they've got a donut that I think is at least as good as Krispy Kreme, and the individual donut's about almost twice the size. And if you happen to like filled donuts, they make the cases, and if you want a cream filled or a chocolate filled or a raspberry filled, they'll pull it out of the case and fill it while you're standing there.
Yeah, that's the way they did the one in Eden.
So
probably the same people.
South Hill?
The
South Hill Donut Shop?
Uh-huh.
Have you ever had them?
Oh yeah, I've had the South Hill Donut Shop too, yeah. No, they're too heavy and dense.
Hey, they're good.
They're good, but they're too heavy and dense.
Awesome.
A donut needs to be kind of fluffy, light. It doesn't need to be like eating a cake.
Danville donuts are kind of cakey.
Yes.
They're not like bad, but I'll still eat them. But
they're pretty good. But anyway, getting back on topic, I'm gonna try to show this one little video, Jonathan. And what it does, it's really short, but it's giving you a comparison of the output of 2 nozzles. I'm gonna switch it over and we'll play that, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it a little bit. So, but if you've ever done any application with a drop type nozzle on a boom sprayer, this to me is worthwhile. So we'll try to do it, and I'll get back to it here in a second. I'm gonna play it twice and it's only 10 seconds. Okay, were you able to see that? No.
No.
Well, beat. All right. I'll try. The video's only 10 seconds long, and it's showing two nozzles, and it's comparing the two. But I thought that did it.
No, your screen, nothing changed when you hit a button.
Okay, let me try again. No, he says. Okay. I can't get it to play.
We're seeing it over your shoulder.
I watched it. It was 10 seconds.
Did that work?
Oh, we saw it over your shoulder on a screen behind you, but you said it's only a 10-second video, but just looked like a nozzle spraying.
Yeah.
Well, that's really what it is. It's just you're looking at two different nozzles, and the one on the left is running at a much higher pressure than the one on the right, and the one on the left is also a little. It's a significantly smaller nozzle, which increases the amount of drift, and it's running under a higher pressure. And if you were spraying using this type of boom spray, you would not want that type of application technique. You want to use the one on the right, which was a larger particle size and more directed to a ground application. And again, I can't figure what's the matter with this, but that's what we're talking about. I had to shut it off and come back to it to because I played it 3 times and it wouldn't even allow me to do any more. So, but when we're talking about applications of pesticides, drift is a major concern. I don't know whether I had a scenario to occur up in our community. Well, it's been 15 years ago. There was a guy that owned quite a substantial farm, and he had miniature horses, and they were growing some some high quality hay to feed these horses. And he had developed quite a bit of a population of broadleaf weeds in this hay field. And in the spring, he had a couple of workers that were employed, and he told them that he needed to apply a 2,4-D type of herbicide to these hay fields. And this guy, he was kind of arrogant and bossy, and it was his way or no way. And, he told these guys to do this maybe the 3rd week in March. And they offered some resistance, told them it wasn't a good day to spray because the wind, typical March day, they had a west wind of about 15 to 18 miles an hour, and they told him it wasn't a good time to do it. And this, you couldn't tell this guy no or anything. You couldn't adjust his attitude. If it was his way, they were going to do it. So they got all sold up and fixed 2 different spray rigs and went out to spray this about 150 acres of hay fields that were there on the side of 58. And it being, early part of or mid-March, the vegetation was beginning to break bud. Dogwoods were beginning to show a little bit of leaf, and a lot of ornamental plants were breaking dormancy. And some of these hayfields were just across a paved road from some homes. And these guys were, pardon my French, kind of pissed that the guy made them go on and do it on this windy day. And what eventually happened is all these homeowners actually complained to the guy, ended up suing him for the damage that occurred to their landscapes with their dogwood trees and associated broadleaf plants because of the application of this 2,4-D that had occurred on the other side of this paved road. And it was in a situation where they had nozzles very much like this boom spray that we're looking at here that they had them pumped up to pretty high pressure, and it was just an unusual situation for a lot of drift. And they basically had to buy and replant all the landscape materials on these 3 homes that were on the other side of this paved road. And it was just a product of poor management in the timing that they did it because of the wind, and then the guys that were working for him, cranked the pressures up above normal, and it got to be a real ugly situation. And it could have been fixed or remedied so much easier if they had turned their pressure down, and it probably wouldn't have gotten any drift had that been the case. But because of the increased pressure, they got a lot of damage in the drift from those nozzles across the road. I don't know what it cost him. I don't know whether his insurance paid it or not, but it was an expensive lesson for the man. I told you I'm going to find you some problems, calculation problems to do as we talk about the actual application. But there are several examples in the textbook that gives you things, examples of how to do some of the calculations that are needed when you go to figuring rates and proportions and applications of different things. And in doing this, there's a lot of, I don't say a lot, but there's several things that you need to be aware of. And one of them is the square footage in an acre. We talked about that earlier, but that's 43,560 square feet. One of these examples, it says here, if a label application rate is 2 gallons per acre, how many fluid ounces would you need to treat 1,000 square feet? And this is a pretty typical type of scenario. But if you're looking at 2 gallons per acre, how many ounces in a gallon, Miss Amanda? Got any idea? She says, don't ask me that. How many ounces in that gallon of milk that you got out of this morning? You don't drink milk, okay. 128 ounces in a gallon of milk.
It was 20 something.
What was that?
Oh, Jonathan and I were guessing.
Okay.
He got it right. I didn't think very well. I didn't think fast enough. I panicked again.
Well, that's not on you. And when we go to talking about this stuff, it's not the things that you normally use on a day-to-day basis unless you work with this kind of stuff. But if the application rate is 2 gallons per acre, so you double the 128, you got 256 ounces that are to be applied on an acre. But this scenario says you're only applying it on 1,000 square feet. So how would you get from, Amanda's about to turn her head on me here. She doesn't want to think about this.
I don't,
I can do it.
right.
You know what? Well, this is what you got to do in these things. Amanda says nope, she'd hire Roto-Rooter or Kim Loan or somebody like that to do it. But they've got to do it. So if the rate's 2 gallons per acre, and you got 1,000 square feet, so if you had 256 ounces, how would you get from 1,000 to 1,000 square feet from 43,560 square feet?
Brain's not processing.
Your brain's not
You're
processing.
saying.
Can you tell her, Jonathan?
I'm trying to figure it out. If you divide one number by another number and then you get a.
Yeah, you do.
Not exactly.
In this situation, what you do is set up a ratio, and you put your recommendations on one side of the ratio, and then you put your desired number of ounces in your question mark over 1,000 on the other side, and then you just figure the ratio. So you're looking at the 256 times 1,000 divided by 43,560. So it's going to give you about 5.9 ounces on 1,000 square feet. And that close to you, John?
No, I didn't know. I was wondering what the equation, like the calculation was. Well, I know you just said it, but I was typing on my.
Okay. What you do is you'll, working across the ratio, you do your 256 times 1,000, and that's going to be divided by 43,560.
Okay.
And that's going to give you the number of fluid ounces per 1,000 square feet. And when I've done this before, either in just practice situations or a test situation, it's really common for people to come up with something in a ridiculous kind of answer, because they don't do one of the calculations properly. So whenever you're doing something like this, step back from what you're calculating and look to see if your answer is reasonable. So as we think about this, 1,000 square feet is a lot less. You know, it's just a small portion of an acre. It's actually 1/43rd, roughly, of an acre. So if you're looking at 256 ounces on an acre, you know that when you figure this out, it's going to be a whole lot less than that 256 ounces. So that's why you get at it at about 5.9 ounces. So you're looking at a small area, and you put a small amount on it. And the challenge is to get it on there even. Amanda's giving you the most pitiful look.
I do not learn stuff like this the way you're teaching.
How do I need to teach it?
In front of me.
You want it to be?
Yeah.
That's why I'm going to give you some practice pages to do
Okay.
when I get time to sit in the office long enough to pull them up. But I
That's
have.
how I'll learn it.
That's fine. That's fine. But you know, and this is just one example of a lot of these types of things. Let's see. There's another one here. It says, how do you convert 1,000 square foot rate to a rate per acre? Assume that you've need to use 2 pints per 1,000 square feet. What would be the rate per acre? And this is quite common in some homeowner type chemicals that you might buy that they're based on so much concentrated material per 1,000 square feet. But you've got an acre of a yard, so you need to know how much of the solution that you need to get. So in that situation, you put your pints per acre over your 43,560, and then you put your 2 pints over your 1,000 square feet. And you do your multiplication. You do the 43,560 times 2, and that's going to give you 87,120, and you divide that by 1,000. It's going to give you about 87 pints to put on the acre. So if you had 87 pints, how many gallons would it be? What was that, John?
21 3/4 gallons.
You're right. That's good. And, because rarely would you buy material in pints. Most often you'll buy it in gallons or 2.5 gallons. So, did you get that one, Amanda?
No.
She's not even trying. She's just. But these types of things are real world applications that you have to deal with. She says, I'll learn it another time. Okay. In the situation that Jonathan had, applying the Roundup that he was talking about, he was using with a backpack sprayer. Roundup is a unique material in that it is dose dependent. And by that I mean you've got a certain list of plants that are controlled by a 1% solution of Roundup. Then you've got another category that are controlled by a 1.5% solution of Roundup. Then you've got another category that are much tougher and need at least a 2% solution. And Roundup is like I say, is unique in that to get that 1% solution, you use 1 ounce in a gallon of water. And to get the 1.5% solution, you use 1.5 ounces in the gallon. So Amanda, guess for me, how many ounces would you need for a 2% solution? 2, yeah. We're talking about, we worked our way up from 1 to 1.5 to 2. And that's one of the interesting things about Roundup, the way they create the recommendations. So if you're going to mix Roundup in a 100-gallon tank, and you want to have a 2% solution, how much would it take? And this is real. I mean, what? All right. If it takes 2 ounces in a gallon to make the 2%, and you're going to use 100 gallons, how many ounces would it take? 200 ounces. So if you're going to go and buy Roundup, how much would you purchase to get your 200 ounces? Can you tell her, John? How would you do that one?
I'm really hearing. I'm sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. I was picking on her, and I didn't mean to be neglecting you. If we had a situation where you wanted to apply 2 ounces of Roundup and you had a 100-gallon sprayer, how many ounces would you need to create that mixture? How many ounces?
Did you say 200?
Yep, 200 ounces. So, but if you went to the store to buy your Roundup, how much would you purchase? Because they don't sell it in ounce quantities.
Hey, you said they don't sell it per ounce?
No, it's usually in quarts or gallons or 2.5 gallons. So if you needed 200 ounces, you take that 200 divided by 128 to give you the number of gallons.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah,
And if you're, that's going to figure about 1.5 gallons. So more than likely, you're either going to have to buy 2 1-gallon units or a single 2.5 gallon jug. So, but that, this is the type of things that hopefully we're going to get to. Amanda's sitting over here gritting her teeth and grinning at me, so I don't know what to do with her. There are a lot of, that's a liquid type of dilution process that we're talking about. But the same thing exists when we're talking about using dry formulations. It can be the same type of thing. Your spray tank holds 500 gallons. Your label calls for using 2 pounds of a formulated product per 100 gallons of water. How many pounds of the product do you need to add to the tank to make a full load? And this is very common. This is the way we used to always do our orchard chemicals. And that's the rate the way it was done during the time I'm talking about. The standard rate recommendations were generally so many pounds per 100 gallons. And I can't tell you how many times that I've had people come to us. We used to sell a lot of ag chemicals at the house, and people would come to me and say, "Well, it takes me 3 tanks to spray my orchard. How much of this do I need?" And the first question is, "How big is your tank?" So if the rate's 2 pounds per 100 gallons and they've got a 500-gallon tank, how much does it take to make it? I mean, how much of the formulated product does it take for them to make a tank at that rate? Amanda got one right. She said 10 pounds. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, small number, yeah. Now, if that individual had said it took 4 tanks for them to cover their orchard, they had 4 500-gallon tanks, how many pounds of product do they need to buy? She says 8. No. It took 10 pounds to make 1 tank, so you needed 4 tanks, so you're looking at 40 pounds, right? And rarely does a dry formulated product come in 40-pound bags. Most of the time it's going to be in either a 10-pound bag, a 20-pound bag, a 30-pound bag, or a 50-pound bag. So you'd have to work out the calculations to get the volume that you needed to do your spray. Another scenario says your sprayer applies 15 gallons per acre. Your tank holds 400 gallons. How many acres would that tank spray? That one's fairly simple. You take your 400 divided by 15 to get the number of acres that it can spray. Okay? 26.6, she says. Does that seem reasonable? Yeah, it is. Yeah. The 15 gallon per acre is a pretty low rate, and that 400 gallons is a pretty sizable tank. So you're looking at about 25 or 26 acres. So if you were going to have a labeled rate of material at 3 pounds per formulated product per acre, how much should you put in your tank? what would you do? John, you got it? Okay. Well, what we're trying to do is sort of give you an idea of the thought processes that are involved with doing this. And for some people, it can be just unmanageable because they haven't worked with this kind of stuff. And that's the reason I'm spending a little time, also in lieu of the fact that our videos didn't work. But this is the type of stuff that you need to get a handle on. So what we're talking about there, you've got the 26.7 acres that tank would cover, and you're going to put on 3 pounds per acre. So in that 400 gallons, you're going to need to put in about 80 pounds of your pesticide. And that's a whole lot to put in a tank. That's not a very realistic scenario. Because if you put 80 pounds in 400 gallons of water, it's going to make that almost seem thick to me. Depends on the material. But, that's what you get into. And then in here it says, what if the job requires less than a full tank? How would you adjust it? Or do you mix up the whole 400 gallons and you get through, just pour it out at the end of the field? Would you do that, Amanda? No. That's one of the challenges that we get as we talk about chemical application. And it requires a little bit of experience and knowledge of your equipment and the land that you cover. Because your goal, when we had 150 acres of orchard to spray, we didn't worry because we were always going to have some we needed to put out. But the little vineyard that I've got here on campus, it's only about 1 acre. And the spray rig that I've got that I use is set up to dispense about 90 gallons per acre. So my challenge is to make sure that I've got enough to cover the vineyard and not have much left. But when you have something left, you're dealing with a potential hazardous material because it's a chemical in water, and you don't want to have to deal with a hazmat situation. So generally the recommended solution to that situation is to drive back over part of what you've already sprayed and respray it until you run out of the material. But your goal as an applicator is to know the area that you're spraying and try to mix the volume of material that is needed to cover that and not have just a minimal amount left. Now, on more than one occasion, I've sprayed this vineyard here and get about halfway, 2/3 of the way through and realize that I'm going to have too much left. And that will occur when I've got a blockage or something in one of my nozzles. This little spray rig has got 7 nozzles on each side. And if I'm going along, I try to spray it at 2 miles an hour. And I've got my pressure set at about 600 pounds. And it's blowing it out. But if one of these or 2 of these nozzles happens to become obstructed, instead of me putting on 80 gallons per acre, I may only be putting on 45. And it's almost impossible to look at the spray pattern and to determine that is being reduced because the wind coming out of this spray is at 200 miles an hour and the pressure's at about 400 pounds. So it's just a fine mist that gets fogged out. And you can't see a difference in the spray pattern. So as we look at it, when you get to that point, you realize that something's not right. Quite often I'll stop and go check my nozzles, and I'll find that 1 or 2 of them have been obstructed, and it's reduced the volume that I'd be putting out. So it makes it quite a bit more of a challenge. And that's one of the things that's always a challenge for any applicator is to make sure that you're getting your application on in a manner which you intend to. So what I was saying, if you had less than a full tank, this was a 400 gallon tank that would normally cover 26 acres. If you decided you only had 13 acres to spray, you would, hopefully mix 200 gallons, and at 3 pounds per acre, you'd put 40 pounds in that 200 gallons and go at it the same manner. Hopefully you'd use up the 200 gallons to spray your 13 acres that you were talking about. There's quite a few scenarios and situations that are spelled out in this in the latter portion of this chapter, and they're all different, and they're all unique. And one of the things that is done is it tries to create an understanding for you how you would determine the size of your field or the area that you want to treat. Now, if your field's a perfect square or a rectangle, it's easy. I believe it was John, we were talking about the size of an acre, and he said it was 70 yards by 70 yards, and that's pretty close. If you're looking at a square, it's about 210 by 210. That's going to give you a little over 43,000 square feet. What if you got a field that's a circle? How would you figure that acreage? Goes back to geometry. You have to figure the area inside of that circle.
It's the.
What was that?
It's radius times pi.
Pi r squared, yeah.
Pi r squared. Yeah, I was getting there. I was trying to assemble it in my mind.
Yeah, all of these things are different, but you got to.
And you're building a box around a circle, and then knowing that
What if you put the square inside the square? How many circles inside the square?
well that's a little bit harder. But what you're doing is building a box around the circle, and then knowing that I wish I could share my screen.
Robert is.
Yes, it sucks. But you see what you're doing there. In 3.14, the circle is a little more than 75% of the square that you're building. And that's why that math works. So your r squared, your radius squared, that's going to be your diameter. So how wide is that square if it's a square? R squared and then 3.14. Anyway, sorry, geometry class.
Well, that's what a whole lot of what we're talking about right now is. It is the applications of geometry, because we talk about the area of a triangle and as the next one, but some of these, you don't have a perfect square or rectangle or circle. Some of these things are irregular shaped things, and some of us are fortunate to have access to maps from your farm service agency, and they'll give you your field size. But if you don't have that, it can be pretty cumbersome to figure an area of a irregularly shaped field. So we get to the point of doing some close approximation. But as we're dealing with these things, it gets to be you got to apply these things. You've got to have a knowledge or gain a knowledge of your application, the area that you've got to deal with. And when we're talking about a material that you apply 3 pounds in 100 gallons of water, that application rate is not too bad. But if you happen to have a material that you've got to potentially apply an ounce per acre, and there are some of the newer materials that are formulated in that fashion. And the materials that were 3 pounds per acre, they may only cost you $7, $8, $10 a pound. So, you're looking at a $30 per acre cost for that particular chemical to be applied to an acre. But now, if you're looking at some of the newer materials and the application rate is an ounce per acre, you got to be careful. You got to be careful with your application rate and be particularly careful with the measurement as you're getting that particular chemical out of its container that you purchased it in. Most of the time, those are coming in a sealed container that a lot of it are dry flowable materials anymore, and they may only be an 8-ounce package. Sometimes it's a 12-ounce package, sometimes a 14-ounce package. But that ounce per acre, it's probably the material itself when you purchased it was, again, about $30 per ounce instead of the 3 pounds per acre at $10. So you're looking at a similar cost per acre, but the application rates and the measuring and handling of those materials is so much more detailed and involved, because when you're looking at that ounce per acre, if it's in say a 10-ounce bottle, you're looking at that 10 ounces costing you $300. So you don't want to open that and start to put it, weigh it out and start getting ready to go in your tank and sneeze on it, because you're going to blow it everywhere. It can be pretty detailed. So, these newer chemistries and newer chemicals, and the chemical companies have done everything they can to reduce the rates, because they're looking at really high valued chemicals, and they're trying to do that. So, as we look at those things, we need to do it on a case by case basis, but make sure that we can properly calculate our rates that our equipment is going to put out, our rates per acre, and make sure that when we are figuring our application rates to the amount to put in our tank, make sure it's reasonable. Do your calculations and stop and think and make sure that you want to do. In years past, we've had a lot of ag chemical reps. There was usually one for every one of the major chemical companies that spend their time just traveling over a designated area, and they basically hold your hand. They tell you that you need to put this much on, that much on, and of course they were promoting their own chemicals, their own products, but those guys don't exist anymore. Costs of chemicals and the field reps have gotten so expensive that we don't have the luxury of having those folks there. The chemical reps now that are working for Syngenta and Dow and used to be DuPont, all these chemical companies, they consolidated and merged, and you may have one field rep that covers the entire eastern United States. And they, in some cases, they'll have 2 guys. One of them will be responsible for the recommendations of the chemicals for the tree fruits, and another guy will be responsible for the field crops. But it requires a high degree of expertise to be able to evaluate the problems that exist and assist the growers that are growing these crops to accurately apply and determine what needs to be done to produce these crops. It was complicated when I was a kid and growing up, but it's totally changed now. It's so much more sophisticated. The chemical reps that existed when I was a kid, most of the time they were guys that had gotten out of high school with an ag degree, and they would spend some time working in one of the warehouses where they were moving product and handling it and so forth. And then they would quite often promote them to ride along with one of the older chemical reps, and they'd eventually gain a territory of their own. And these guys had a wonderful job in my eyes. I enjoyed doing it. I did a little of it at one time, traveling and visiting with growers and looking at the crops and making recommendations and so forth. But now the guys that have those positions quite often have have at least a bachelor's degree. A lot of them have a master's degree in plant science or chemical science. So it's an industry that's changed, and I can see additional changes coming. Environmental issues have made a huge difference in the application and use of chemicals. We've gotten away from the more toxic type materials that we used to use, and using things that are much gentler, but they're targeted. Quite often you'll buy a particular insecticide that's only effective against one particular insect or life stage of that insect. And the timing of that application has got to be very, very well defined and hit a particular window in the stage of development of the insect. So that gets into a whole nother can of worms that we'll talk about sometime. But I'd recommend that you try to look at some of these scenarios that are in the textbook, and I'll find some more to supplement it if I can just get a few minutes to stay in the office, because I've got a file that's got some of that stuff in it. So I'm sorry I couldn't get those videos to play. I don't know how valuable they would have been anyway, but I was wanting to share them with you. Any questions? Ms. Carol, I'm glad you got in with your pink hat.
No, sir. Thank you.
Well, we've kind of raked Jonathan over the coals and picked on Amanda today, so you missed your turn in the barrel.
So y'all got to do some of these formulations then today?
Yeah, we looked at those, and I'll try to get some stuff and send it to you, some examples. But the ones that are in the book are good examples. Different types of things. The book that came out before this one didn't have these examples in it. They just sort of left you hanging, and I think these are very worthwhile to go through. And as we prepare for the state test, there'll be a few of these type questions that you'll need to have an understanding of. They again will be multiple choice questions, but like I was talking about a while ago, you need to, once you do your calculations or get an idea what you need to just sort of step back and look and make sure that that's a reasonable answer or response to. Because it's real easy to calculate something that you think is right, and I've seen a lot of folks. We ask for the amount that needs to be put in a 500-gallon tank, and I've seen some answers come in that it should have been 15 pounds, and they tell me it's 150 pounds. Trying to dilute 150 pounds of wettable powder in a 500-gallon tank is not going to be very realistic. So you just want to make sure that your answers and responses are something that would be within reason.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. John, you guys got any other questions? Can I help with anything with this as we move along?
No, sir.
I'm just going to study, I'm going to study for plant science test coming up.
That'll be fine. That's fine. I'm not putting any pressure on you. I'll harass Amanda while she's here because she's close to me. I can do that. I can see how she reacts when I do that.
Yeah, it's all her fault anyway.
I know it. And when Tyler's not here, she gets all of it.
Yes, and it's Amanda's fault that the plant science class didn't get recorded yesterday. It's all Amanda's fault.
Was it? She didn't push the button?
Yeah, apparently she didn't get the button for the plant science class, but I happened to be in classroom and they got it for the animal one, but just as a heads up.
Okay. Well.
But it's all Amanda's fault anyway, so.
I don't believe you're even getting a raise out of her for that, Tom. She's just not paying much attention to you.
No, she doesn't like me anymore, if she ever liked me in the first place.
I don't think she likes you any less, though.
Well, it could be that. Can't get any lower than rock bottom.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. We're going to look at some of the scenarios. Tom, I haven't mentioned it to you, and it's time, I guess. How are we going to be able to administer the private applicators test to the folks down your way?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that a week ago, what the deal was. It has to be proctored by like a extension agent or somebody like that, doesn't it? Or a license?
Normally that's the scenario, yeah.
Okay.
But
I'll
I
talk.
can do,
Oh, go ahead.
I can do ours from here. But it's just going to be Tyler and Amanda.
Well, if you're legal for proctoring, could we get away with like us having the cameras going and have Carolyn and Jonathan taking it in here and you're like watching through the TV screen?
I would think I have a real good relationship with our county agent here, and that's basically how we've done it in the past from here.
Okay.
The problem will be getting the test to you. What I may do is talk to our agent and see if I can. I mean, it's just Jonathan and Carol, right?
Yes.
All right, I can send or get a couple of copies of the test and the answer sheets to you, and then we can do it that way, and then I can get them back, and we send them all in.
Which I'm backing it up because remember we have two people online, which, you know, Timothy, he's been taking the classes, the tests there at Patrick Henry, so.
Okay.
And then Erin, she's been in Chase City, and Jennifer she's actually been taking her stuff at Averett. Those two will have to.
What would be the likelihood of getting if we can get Tim to come in here during the time we do it, and get the other folks to appear in your classroom at the time we do it, would that be a reasonable thing to do?
That's the thing, because Tim, he's actually in Danville. If we can get him to show up in well, that's what you just said.
Yeah.
Where Jennifer, she's been taking her stuff out of Averett. She's somewhere, Danville, South Boston, somewhere in that area. So that would be kind of a haul for her to go either way. And Erin, she's kind of out that way too.
Well, it would. I don't want to deprive them of the opportunity. We've got a little bit of time before the end of the semester, so we can probably be creative in some manner. If need be, the two that are in Averett, I could take the test and meet with them down there somewhere and do it.
Okay.
Just some way. Melanie's always been great for me to work with to get these done, and and it's actually counts for numbers for her when we do it. So,
which Dixie's worked with an extension agent here because we have done that as one of our ag labs for the animal science, plant science class in the past.
Okay.
So we might.
You sort of ponder on it a little bit, and we'll do whatever's needed.
Okay.
But that was one of the